She was 26 years old, a TikTok star with 300,000 followers, a successful tattoo artist earning millions. But for 7 days after her death, she kept posting. Someone was pretending to be Anastasia Grishman. Someone was selling her belongings. Someone was living in her apartment, while her body lay decomposing in the bathroom. This isn't just a story about murder. It's about digital deception, obsession, and how social media became the perfect cover for the perfect crime. But to understand how Anastasia's Grishman's life ended, we need to understand how it began. St. Petersburg, Russia, 1996. Anastasia Khamlovsky was born into a world that didn't want her. Her mother was an alcoholic who disappeared for months at a time. Her father was absent. By the time Nastya turned 12, she was living with her grandmother, the only person who ever truly cared about her. While other kids played with toys, Nastya was learning to survive. Her grandmother's small house became her sanctuary, but even there, the pain followed her. At 16, she got her first tattoo, then another and another. Each needle prick was a declaration. I exist. I matter. I won't be invisible. Soon, her entire body became a canvas. Intricate designs covered her arms, legs, torso. Each tattoo told a story of abandonment, or fighting to be seen, or refusing to disappear. Her mother would visit occasionally, always drunk, always disappointed, always reminding Nastya that she was a mistake. You are destroying yourself, her mother would slur. Those tattoos make you look like a freak. But Nastya had found her calling. She wasn't just getting tattoos anymore, she was giving them, learning the art, building a skill that would one day make her rich. By 20, she was working in a tattoo parlor. By 22, she had her own clients. By 24, she was making more money than most people in St. Petersburg. But success came with a price. Loneliness, the kind that eats your life, the kind that makes you vulnerable to the wrong kind of person. 2,000 kilometers away in Omsk, another story was unfolding, a darker one. Dmitry, Chen was 18 years old and already obsessed with death. His Twitter feed was a window into a disturbed mind. I've lived several lives in my 18 years. I love walking through cemeteries with girls much younger than me. Help me kill my girlfriend's mother. He posed for photos in graveyards, wrote poetry about suicide, and had a very specific preference for women. Never dated anyone over 16 or heavier than 55 kilos, same as 120 pounds. His girlfriend back then was just a teenager. He called her shkura, Russian slang for a cheap woman. He was already showing signs of violence, already crossing lines. But Dimitry had dreams of fame, of recognition, of being somebody important. The problem was he had no talent, no skills, just an inflated sense of entitlement and a growing resentment towards the world, and a drug problem that was spiraling out of control. By 2017, he'd been convicted twice: theft, draft evasion. Both times he got off with probation. The system failed to see what was coming. The same year, Dimitry made a decision that would change everything. He was moving to St. Petersburg, the city of dreams, where he would finally become famous. St. Petersburg, 2018. Anastasia Grishman, she'd taken the stage name to distance herself from her past, was thriving. Her tattoo work was in demand. Her social media was growing. She was finally building the life she'd always dreamed of. That's when she met Dimitry. He was different from her usual clients, quiet, intense, interested in her story. He listened when she talked about her childhood, her pain, her dreams. For someone who'd been ignored her entire life, the attention was intoxicating. What she didn't know was that Dimitry was high most of the time they spent together. His drug addiction has followed him from Omsk to St. Petersburg. But he was good at hiding it, at least in the beginning. Dmitry was smart enough to play the long game. He didn't rush. He studied her, learned her weaknesses, her desperate need to be loved, her fear of abandonment. Within months, he'd moved into her apartment. Just temporary, he said, until I get on my feet. But Dmitry had no intention of getting on his feet. He'd found his meal ticket and he was going to ride it as long as possible. Between 2019 and 2020, from the outside, Anastasia and Dimitry looked like the perfect couple. Young, edgy, in love. They posted constantly on social media, showed off their lifestyle, their apartment, their relationship, their success. But behind the camera, cracks were already showing. Dimitry wasn't contributing to anything. He didn't work, didn't pay bills, didn't even help around the apartment. He just existed, living off Anastasia's hard work while contributing to nothing. And his drug use was getting worse. What started as an occasional recreational use had become a daily habit. Anastasia's money wasn't just founding their lifestyle, it was founding his addiction. Friends started to notice. He's using you, they tell Anastasia. He is a parasite. You deserve better. But Anastasia was trapped, not by force, by fear. The same fear that had haunted her since childhood. The fear of being alone, of being abandoned again. So she worked harder, took on more clients, built her social media presence, started exploring new revenue streams. That's when Dmitry had an idea, a way to finally get his piece of the fame pie. We should make videos, Dmitry suggested. Adult content. OnlyFans is huge right now. We could make serious money. Anastasia was hesitant at first. She'd built her reputation as a tattoo artist. This felt like a step backward. But Dmitry was persistent and he needed the money. His drug habit was expensive, getting more expensive every day. It's just us, he argued, no one else, just our relationship. And think about the money. The money was tempting. Anastasia was already earning 2 to 300,000 rubles a month from her tattoo work, same as $3,800 a month. But adult content could multiply that, maybe even hit 1 million rubles monthly. So they started small, a few videos, some photos, posted on OnlyFans and other platforms. The response was immediate and massive. Within months, Anastasia Grishman was one of the most popular adult content creators in Russia. Her TikTok followers exploded to 300,000. Her monthly income soared. She was making more money than she'd ever dreamed possible. But success came with complications. As Anastasia's star rose, Dmitry's resentment grew. She was the face of their operation. She was the one getting the attention, the messages, the offers, the fame. He was just there, the boyfriend, the supporting character in her story, and his drug addiction was consuming more and more of their income. What should have been financial security was being funneled into his habit. Anastasia was working harder than ever, but they never seemed to have enough money. The messages kept coming from fans, from admirers, from men who wanted to meet her. Some were innocent, others were not. Dimitry read every single one. He had access to all of her accounts, her passwords, her DMs, her entire digital life. And what he saw drove him crazy. You are flirting with them, he'd accuse her. You are enjoying the attention. You are going to leave me. The fights became more frequent, more intense. Neighbors heard shouting. Friends noticed bruises. But Anastasia was making too much money to stop, and Dimitry was too dependent on that money to live. They were trapped in a toxic cycle. Success breeding resentment, resentment breeding violence. The television appearance. Spring 2022. The opportunity came from NTV, a major Russian television network. They wanted to feature Anastasia and Dmitry on a show called Beyond the Edge, a program about people living unconventional lifestyles. For Dmitry, this was his chance. Finally, he'd be on television. Finally, he'd be famous. The interview was revealing. Anastasia talked about her childhood, her struggles, her success. She was articulate, confident. Dimitry, on the other hand, came across as awkward, uncomfortable, clearly the junior partner in the relationship. And though he tried to hide it, the effects of his drug use were visible to anyone who knew what to look for. But the real drama came when they brought in Anastasia's mother. The woman who'd abandoned her daughter was now ready to judge her choices. "I don't approve of what she is doing," the mother declared. "This isn't the life I wanted for her." The irony was devastating. A mother who'd never been there for her daughter, now criticizing the life that her daughter had built for herself. After the show aired, something changed in Dimitry. The attention he'd craved had backfired. Instead of making him famous, it had highlighted how insignificant he was, how much he depended on Anastasia, how little he contributed to their success. The breaking point. July 2022. Anastasia was talking about changes, big changes. She'd become fascinated with South Korean culture, K-pop, Korean dramas, the lifestyle. She was learning the language, making plans. "I want to move to Korea," she told friends. "Start fresh, build something new." The implication was clear. This fresh start didn't include Dimitry. He wasn't stupid. He could see the writing on the wall. Anastasia was outgrowing him, outgrowing their relationship, outgrowing the life they had built together. And without her, he was nothing. No skills, no income, no prospects. Just a 24-year-old ex-convict with delusions of success and a serious drug problem. The messages from other men weren't helping. Every day, dozens of admirers reached out to Anastasia, some offering business opportunities, others offering something more personal. Dimitry's paranoia reached a fever's pitch, enchanted by whatever substances he was using. He was convinced she was cheating, convinced she was planning to leave him, convinced that everything he'd built his life around was about to disappear. July 31st, 2022. The day started normally. Anastasia posted her usual content, responded to messages, worked on her tattoo designs, made plans for the evening. She had no idea it would be her last day alive. The apartment they shared was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. The same space where they filmed hundreds of videos, where Anastasia had built her empire, where she thought she was safe. The details of what happened next are brutal, and they come from Dimitry's own confession. They were lying on the bed, talking, maybe arguing. The conversation turned to her plans, her future, her desire to live. Dimitry was high, paranoid, convinced she was betraying him. Something in him snapped. The rage he'd been building for months, the resentment, the fear of abandonment, the chemical paranoia of his addiction, it all came pouring out. He grabbed a knife from the kitchen, came back to the bedroom, and attacked the woman who'd given him everything. 16 stab wounds, maybe more. Anastasia fought for her life, but she was small, 5'2", maybe 110 pounds. Dimitry was bigger, stronger, fueled by rage and drugs. She died in the place she called home, surrounded by the equipment she'd used to build her success, killed by the person she trusted the most. The digital deception. Most killers try to hide the body, destroy evidence, flee the scene. Dimitry had something different, something more sinister. He decided to pretend Anastasia was still alive. He had her phone, her passwords, access to all her social media accounts, her entire digital identity. So he became her. For 9 days, Anastasia Grishman kept posting. Her Instagram stories continued. Her TikTok remained active. She responded to messages from friends and fans. "Hey babe, how are you?" A friend would text. "I'm sick right now, can't talk." Dimitry would respond. "Want to grab dinner this week? Maybe next week. I'm not feeling well. Haven't seen you at the studio lately. Just taking a break. Need some rest." Every response was carefully crafted, designed to buy time, to keep people from getting suspicious, to maintain the illusion that Anastasia was alive and well. But Dimitry wasn't maintaining her online presence. He was liquidating her life. He sold her clothes, her jewelry, her tattoo equipment, her furniture, everything she'd worked for, everything she built. The money went straight to feeding his addiction. Even in death, Nastya was founding Dimitry's drug habit. He even extended the lease on their apartment, paid rent with her money, continued living in the space where he'd murdered her, where her body was decomposing in the bathroom. For over a week, he lived this double life. By day, he was Anastasia Grishman, successful influencer, beloved by thousands. By night, he was a killer, trying to erase the evidence of his crime. The discovery. August 10, 2022. Anastasia's closest friend, Marina, was getting worried, really worried. She'd been trying to reach Nastya for days. The text responses were getting stranger, more distant, less like her friend. Something is wrong, Marina told other friends. This doesn't sound like Nastya. She would never ignore me for this long. Marina decided to go to the apartment. She knocked on the door. No answer. She called out. Silence. That's when she called the police. Officers arrived at the apartment on Yuzhnoye Highway. They knocked, called out. No response. The smell hit them before they even broke down the door. Sweat, sickening, unmistakable. Inside, the apartment was in chaos. Belongings scattered everywhere. Signs of a struggle. And in the bathroom, they found Anastasia, what was left of her, after 9 days in a hot St. Petersburg summer. The scene was horrific, but the investigation was just beginning. By the time police discovered the body, Dmitry was long gone, but he left a trail. Security cameras had captured him coming and going. His phone record told the story of his movements. The digital evidence was overwhelming. They tracked him to Kudrov, a suburb outside St. Petersburg. He was hiding in a hotel, probably planning his next move, maybe thinking he could disappear entirely. When they arrested him, he seemed almost relieved. The weight of maintaining his deception, of living with what he had done, it had been eating him alive. At first, Dimitry tried to play the victim. He claimed Anastasia had begged him to kill her, that she was suicidal, depressed about her relationship with her mother, that he was just helping her end her suffering. She asked me to do it, he told investigators. She couldn't bring herself to commit suicide. I was just helping her. But the evidence didn't support his story. The brutality of the attack, the multiple stab wounds, the defense injuries on Anastasia's hands. This wasn't assisted suicide. This was murder. When the story fell apart, Dimitry changed his tune. Now it was an accident, a fight that got out of hand. He panicked, lost control, didn't mean for it to happen. He never mentioned his drug addiction, never admitted how it had fueled his paranoia, how it had consumed their money, how it had driven him to violence. But investigators weren't buying it. The forensic evidence painted a clear picture. This was a sustained, violent attack, driven by rage, by jealousy, by a need to control. Days later, investigators made a calculated decision. They would take him back to the apartment where Anastasia had died, back to the scene where her life had ended in violence. The reconstruction would be methodical, clinical. A mannequin would stand in for the victim that would force him to demonstrate his actions step by step. The bloodstains had been documented, photographed, analyzed, but now they needed something more. They needed him to show them exactly how it happened. The mannequin stood silent in the center of the room, its blank face a haunting reminder of what had been lost. He hesitated, his hands trembling as he approached the lifeless figure. As he demonstrated his actions, investigators watched with trained eyes. They noted inconsistencies in his story, the way his account shifted under pressure, how certain details emerged only when confronted with the physical evidence.
И в один момент я вот так чуть приподнялся вот, и нанес шею. Я перевернул и положил на колени. После вот я перевернул уже на живот, вот, и все. Через какое-то время я скончалась.
The trial, 2023, when Dmitry Khamlovsky, he changed his name back from Grishman, appeared in court. He was a different person. Gone was the confident young man who dreamed of fame. In his place sat a broken killer, facing the consequences of his actions. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, the history of domestic violence, the financial dependence, the growing resentment, the digital deception after the murder. They painted a picture of a man who couldn't handle his girlfriend's success, who felt emasculated by her achievements, who killed her rather than let her leave him. The defense tried to paint Dimitry as a victim himself of circumstance, of mental illness, of a toxic relationship. They brought up his difficult childhood, his mother's death, his struggles with depression, but they carefully avoided mentioning his drug addiction, the elephant in the room that explained so much of his behavior. But the evidence was overwhelming: the brutality of the crime, the calculated deception afterward, the complete lack of remorse. The verdict: the judge wasn't swayed by the defense's arguments. Dmitry Khamlovsky was sentenced to 8 years in a maximum security prison for taking a life, for destroying a future, for robbing the world of Anastasia Grishman's potential. 8 years. It seemed like nothing compared to what he had taken. But the story didn't end with the verdict. After Anastasia's death, the vultures circled her mother, the same woman who'd abandoned her as a child, suddenly appeared ready to profit from her daughter's tragedy. She sold exclusive interviews to television stations, $1,300 for her story, her grief, her regret, all performed for the cameras. Anastasia's friends weren't much better. They descended on her apartment like locusts, taking everything they could carry: clothes, jewelry, equipment. One friend was even caught trying to sell Anastasia's underwear online. The girl who fought so hard to build something from nothing was picked clean by the same people who claimed to love her. Today, if you search for Anastasia Grishman online, you'll find her accounts frozen in time, memorialized by the platforms she helped make profitable. Her last real post was July 31st, 2022, a typical day in the life of a successful influencer, making plans, engaging with fans, building her brand. Everything after that was a lie, a killer's performance. For 9 days, hundreds of thousands of people interacted with a dead woman, liked her posts, sent her messages, bought her content, never knowing they were communicating with her murderer. This case revealed something terrifying about our digital age: how easy it is to maintain someone's online presence after they are gone, how our virtual relationships can be manipulated, how the people we think we know through screens might not be who we think they are. Anastasia Grishman built her success on authenticity, on sharing her real story, her real struggles, her real triumphs. But in the end, her digital identity became a tool for deception, a way for her killer to buy time, to cover his tracks, to profit from her death. The questions that remain: could this have been prevented? Were there warning signs that people had missed? How many other victims are out there living with partners who resent their success, who feel entitled to their money, who see them as a property rather than people? Domestic violence doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes it's psychological, financial. Sometimes it builds slowly over years until one day it explodes into something deadly. Anastasia Grishman thought she was building a life with someone who loved her. Instead, she was feeding a parasite, nurturing her own killer, paying for her own destruction. The final post on July 31st, 2022 at 11:47 p.m. Anastasia Grishman posted her final message, a simple Instagram story, a photo of her tattoo equipment. The caption read, "Working late tonight, big plans for tomorrow." She had no idea there would be no tomorrow, no idea that within hours she'd be dead, no idea that her digital ghost would haunt the internet for days. But maybe that's fitting. Anastasia Grishman lived her life online, built her success through social media, found her voice through digital platforms, and even in death, she continues to exist in the digital space, a reminder of a life cut short, a warning about the dangers that lurk behind the screens, a ghost in the machine. This is the story of Anastasia Grishman, a TikTok star who kept posting after she was dead, the girl who fought so hard to be seen and was silenced by the person closest to her. In our connected world, we think we know the people we follow, we see their posts, their stories, their life, but sometimes the person behind the screen isn't who you think it is. Sometimes they are not even alive, and sometimes the most terrifying thing about murder isn't the killing itself, it's how easy it is to hide it, how simple it is to pretend nothing had happened, how long you can fool the world into thinking someone is still alive when they've been dead all along. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this story so it doesn't die. Stories like Anastasia's need to be told, remembered, and learned from. Take care of each other and stay safe. Goodbye.